You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sara J Loureiro.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. I decided to bring my friend Lindsay back to the podcast just because we just have so many, we think at least, we have so many incredible conversations that we think that you guys would really, really benefit from listening to. And so today we wanted to talk a little bit more about a lot of online pop culture and how it's really instigating this whole women can't hustle. So Lindsay, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself again for anyone who hasn't seen, I think your first or second, this might even be your third episode now.
Thanks for having me back. I'm so stoked to be here. My name is Lindsay and I'm a clinical psychologist and a life and mindset coach. I live on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and Sarah and I have known each other for a long time. And we have incredible conversations that are really relevant to the online space and, like she said, pop Instagram culture. And I feel like there's just so much value in these conversations, and people need to be talking more about it because what we see online really creeps into our headspace. And I think it can really have either good effects or it could have toxic effects. And this topic has been really coming up a lot, and I think more and more. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about the toxic effects, because I think that especially a lot of my clients and a lot of my community, because a lot of them are coaches, they already understand, outgrowing your family environment and outgrowing specific environments that you have at home, or understanding how, when you grow and when you work on yourself, maybe you leave behind some friends who you can consider, a little bit more toxic, or someone who isn't fully healed. And I think that so many of us understand this whole level of toxic behavior, like toxic environments for us on those levels. But we're going to talk a lot about social media trends and how those can also really destabilize really amazing, solid foundations that you could already have in your business, which it definitely happened to me.
Yes, absolutely. I've definitely been duped by some of these as well in the past.
Yeah. And so Lindsay and I were just talking about how we're both in a hustle season of our lives and of our businesses. And so I often talk about either you're in hustle or you're in flow, or you have a little bit of a balance, but usually you don't have a perfect balance, right? Like perfect balance of work and life is completely elusive. And we're both in a little bit more of a hustle right now. I mean, I'm 4 weeks away from spending 2 months away from my home. So I'm going to be going to Portugal, going to be going to Paris, going to Toronto, and then going to Vancouver. And so right now I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can done. I am going to be renting out 2 homes while I am gone. And, sometimes I just all I want to do is just kind of go to the beach and just lay around all day. But that's not the season of life I'm in. And Lindsay, what is so hustly about your life right now? Tell us.
Pretty much every single aspect of my life is kind of hustly right now. Business wise, I have a lot going on. I've got a full plate of clients, one-to-one clients that I'm working with right now, saying yes to all sorts of things. I literally just got off a presentation about half an hour before we started this podcast. We've got things going on in our personal life with, building a home and so forth. And then on top of it, I have a 7-year-old, so it's just, there's always a list of things to be doing right now, and a lot of time on my laptop in this season.
Yes. And this episode was inspired by an Instagram reel that Lindsay sent me about how all women want to be doing is, sitting down in parks and like drinking their sparkling water. I don't even know what it was, but it was.
They were like picking flowers, and they had some choice words about women and capitalism, and that women just kind of want to be in touch with their divine feminine and be in a field with their friends picking flowers. And that was pretty much the message. It was very pretty, a beautiful scene. But yeah, it had some choice words about capitalism and working, and that, women don't want to work. And that goes in working hard, it goes against this divine feminine movement.
Yes. And, when you first look at things like that, it feels so inspiring, right? It feels light. It feels airy. It feels like, yeah, of course I want to be in Central Park in New York City and, like hanging out with my friend in my dress and, prancing around in the field or whatever. But if you aren't careful with those types of messages, then you can start to ask yourself, is there something wrong with me as a female if I want to be working, or if I am working, or is it wrong for me to be working really hard?
Right. Or what am I doing wrong? Did I miss the memo that there's another way to be? Kind of like, those are some thoughts that I had, because I historically, I went to school, I worked for, I was in training for a really long time, and I've worked really hard. And I remember when I first saw these sort of images in the past, I was like, well, why didn't I know? Like, why didn't I do that? Like, did I miss something? Like, that's an option, right? Like, it was just very confusing to me when I would see those kinds of images.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And me too, right? I think we both come from a really similar background where we both, I have my master's, you have your PhD. We were both like working the grind. And then, only after years of being in the 9-to-5, we quit. And all of a sudden it was just like, okay, well, I can do this, and I can afford that type of lifestyle. And I think that's the red flag there is you can do that, but is that going to afford you the type of lifestyle that you want? And is that all there is to it? And I think that we've kind of both got duped by that. And I think it's very easy for a lot of people to look at that and be like, oh, well, clearly the people who are doing it with their quote unquote masculine energy or their hustle, those people are doing it wrong, because you can just like prance around in a field and have the most amazing life by doing nothing and just being in your divine feminine.
Yeah. And then if you dig into it, you realize frequently that a lot of these people are trying to sell you something about how they've quote unquote cracked the code, right, to that kind of life, which, it's kind of their own self-interest, these messages that they're putting out.
Yes. And this comes around a lot with business. And as a business coach, I find it just really, really upsetting that I've had so many clients who come to me and they're just like, yeah, but I invested in someone else, spent like $10,000 on this other person who's just like, oh, everything's about your energy, and didn't tell them anything about business strategy, because according to them, strategy wasn't really a part of it. It was all, you just need to get into the right energy and stay in the right energy, and then you'll manifest things. And unfortunately, that's not the way that things work. And I've seen so many people get really frustrated by that type of mentality, because it's kind of like you're giving people basically like 10% of the equation and pretending that 10% of the equation is actually 90%.
Absolutely. Yeah. I see a lot of that. And what it really does too, is it starts, it infiltrates your mind, right? It's advertising essentially, right? And we know good advertising infiltrates your mind. So you buy something, right? Or it shapes how you think so that you're more apt to spend your money on something. And what it does is I feel like it makes people awfulize their life situation or their business, or that hustling is awful, being busy is terrible, you're less in touch with your feminine nature if you're doing those sort of things. And I think it makes people, a lot of people feel pretty bad.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And let's kind of dig into this too, because I think it's really important to see, the smoke and mirrors and kind of what's behind that. And I'm sure that this isn't with every person who's posting things like that. I mean, I think you and I also, love posting things about feminine energy or, just getting into a good vibe, getting into good energy. You're at the beach a lot, right? And you're just like, today I'm just soaking up the sun and I'm soaking up the waves, and it'll be like Tuesday afternoon. You'll be like, yeah, I'm at the beach, right? I'm going to take an entire week and go surfing next week. We were just talking about that. So it's not that we are the antithesis of let's prance around with our friends in Central Park with, our feminine dresses. But the whole idea, and I think it was, like you said, I think it's the choice words, and it's the complete discrediting of any type of hustle. I think that there's so much more that's going on there. And as you and I said, let's say, for example, a woman has this extraordinary life where she is just walking around with her friends all day long and just like playing around in fields. What's really going on there? Because we live in, the world that we live in where it costs money to live.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty extravagant and expensive lifestyle to be able to fund. And they're not mentioning that part.
Mm-hmm. And so, as we were saying in our own conversation, it's probably one of a few different things that would allow you to afford that type of lifestyle without doing any work. So one is have a rich, significant other. So whether it's the rich husband who's paying for that lifestyle, rich spouse, or having you you're essentially dependent on someone else. If you are not going to work and not going to hustle and just be able to step into your divine feminine on a daily basis like that, you are being supported by someone else. And
that's not a bad thing per se. Like, I'm not against that. Like my mom was home with me and raised me. And I'm really grateful that, I had her, and my dad worked really hard. And if you want to be home and do that, like, that's fine. But it's just the lack of mentioning any of that. Right. And just trying to promote this image. Right. Mm-hmm. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of people that are, trying to sell this lifestyle to you, but they're not explaining how it's truly funded.
Yes. And so that's one option there, right? Where really your money is coming from someone in your family or someone who, adores you and who's going to be giving you that type of money for you to go out there and do that. And then I think another thing, and this is something that I see very frequently, I get on sales calls with people all the time where it looks like they have this beautiful feminine energy business, and then they're broke. They're broke. They have maxed out credit cards. They have maxed out loans. And it's just like, wow, that's completely different from what you're seeing on their social media channels. And they even feel ashamed of themselves. They feel a level of shame for that. And I do think it's just this whole, they want to believe in the manifestation so bad. And they want to believe in manifestation is everything so badly. And a lot of it is really like inner wounds of, just feeling so burnt out by hustle culture and not being able to have a balance. That I really do feel like some people just kind of go the complete opposite way. But in going the complete opposite way, they're also denying themselves prosperity, and they're really just living in an illusion.
Yeah, that's really it right there. Denying prosperity and living in an illusion. And I always think of it too as like the pendulum just swings too far the other way. Like, I understand. I used to work like 80 hours a week, and I was completely burnt out from that lifestyle. And I had a lot of toxic ideas around like earning money and work. And so I started kind of going to extreme the other way. Like, I don't have to work or any of those sort of things. And, there's other ways to just have passive income. But FYI, if you want passive income, you have to like set up that and hustle and work to have those sort of things. Right. Like, and so it swung too far the other way. And like, what I've realized is that it comes down to balance, and maybe balance just isn't trendy. Like nobody wants to see a balanced life, but that's like really what it comes down to is having balance. You don't need to work 80 hours a week. Like you don't need to just be in a field picking daisies all the time, right? Like there's some kind of magic in the middle, and it's going to look different for everyone. Some people want to work more, and some people will want something else. And some people have, maybe young babies, and they've got like other things that they, where they want to be putting their energy right now. So it's not like one size fits all, but it's this whole thing. The pendulum always swings too far the other way. And it's got to there's that middle ground. And that's the ground I really strive to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. And the hustle culture in and of itself, I mean, hustle is good. And I think that there's a certain level of hustle where, let's say, for example, the one that I'm in right now, where I'm going to work 9 to 5 every day for the next 5 or 6 days. And then I'm going to go and chill at the beach for another 7 days, So it's not just having a balance, but it's also understanding what season you're in. Are you in a season of hustle, or are you in a season of flow? And I think that one thing that really helped me to kind of understand this for myself, because I know and I don't know if you were like this growing up, Lindsay, but I was shamed growing up because I was too much, right? So it was this whole well, Sarah, you drink too many green smoothies, or Sarah, of course, Sarah's going to eat the dark chocolate, or of course, Sarah's going to run the half marathon, or of course, Sarah's the one who comes home with the A, or whatever it is. And for a long time, it was this whole well, you just try too hard all the time. You're just one of those people who tries really, really hard. And so on the one hand, it was praised, by the people in my life who are like, yes, you're a go-getter, you're someone who does a lot of work. And then on the other hand, it felt really threatening for a lot of people in my life, because it was this whole idea that, I was probably seeping into their own insecurities of how much work they could do on a daily basis. And it took me a long time to just realize that, oh, no, even the people I look up to, and even the people who are teaching manifestation and teaching spirituality at super high levels online, they're hustling, and they're even talking about their hustle. They're being really transparent about it. And once I started to understand that and started to realize, oh, hey, you mean I can be feminine and I can also be a hustler, right? I can wear my flowy skirts and I can do yoga on the beach, and I can also sit down and work for 5 hours straight. I don't have to be either or.
Yeah, absolutely. And really a lot of purpose can come from doing work. I mean, we have self-actualization too, that inner drive of fulfilling what your potential is. And that's going to look different for everyone. And by saying this is what women should strive to, it's kind of taking away all of those other things that we can want to be and to do and so forth, and get that fulfillment and get that purpose, right?
Yes, I love that. And I think that I've been really, really into optimizing your full potential lately. I mean, I've always been. I don't know if you remember this in high school psychology or university psychology, when it was just people exist for these specific reasons. And one person's reason for being was maximizing human potential. I was always I can really relate to that person. That's totally my vibe. And it's just, I think with wanting to become the best version of yourself, you need to have consistency and discipline and focus.
Absolutely.
And I don't feel when we only talk about divine feminine, and when we only talk about women in their divine feminine and in their feminine power, we're automatically discluding discipline and focus, because those aren't aspects of quote unquote divine feminine, especially when we're saying that all women want to do all day and all women should be doing all day is just running around with their friends and just feeling really, really good about everything that they're doing.
Yeah, 100%. I have found that the most freedom in my life has been attained through discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I find that without discipline, I actually lose freedom. I think they're completely related to one another and highly correlated. And I would say to anyone listening to this, if you want more freedom in your life, then you need to find more discipline.
Yes.
They're not, some people might think that they're the opposite. They're not. You get freedom through discipline.
Yes. I even have quotes where I put discipline equals freedom.
Yes, it does.
You need to rewire that in your brain, right? Because if you're trying to have progress anywhere that you go, and I think of this as like a riverbank essentially, and the water through a riverbank, right? If you have the bank for the river, you have somewhere for the water to flow, right? And if that's nice and solid, if that's a nice solid riverbank with the rocks in place and with the solid mud, the water has somewhere to go and it can go there a lot faster, right? Versus if you have no riverbank and you're just going to like pour a whole bunch of water somewhere, there's nowhere for it to go. And so what happens is it ends up just kind of being stagnant and ends up just like moving in all directions, and then it evaporates. And so when we have discipline, when we have focus, when we have consistency, when we're working towards something, that helps us, one, create more freedom, but also two, it helps us develop really high quality skills in our lives and really high quality skill sets in our lives. And I feel like when we only talk about femininity and manifestation and the law of attraction as only feelings and only let's just kind of do nothing all day, right? We are missing out on so much progress that we can create for our bodies, we can create for our brains, right? And also that we can create for our self-esteem, that we can create for our levels of confidence, right? And I just feel like more women need to be okay with their hustle in that sense as well. And I think that the hustle's been really, really demonized online.
Yes. It's awfulizing hustle, which means that's the term awfulizing is like a psychological term. It's making something out to be awful. That's just not awful, right? There's lots of awful things in this world. Hustle really is not awful. But it's making it out to be that it is. And then, you have that idea in your head that this is awful. I shouldn't have to do this, right? It really puts those irrational thoughts into your mind. Mm-hmm. And then they dictate how you feel. But yeah, I mean, personally, I believe in following the plan, not my emotions. I'm not saying don't listen to your emotions. Your emotions are obviously important. It's important to realize like how you feel about things, and emotions can give you a lot of data and feedback. But ultimately, like if we only let our emotions run our life, we're going to be, the riverbank's kind of the perfect example, right? You're just going to be kind of dumping water onto the ground and not flowing it and having it channel into something.
Yeah. And we all want
to I also want to say one more thing too. Like a lot of the people pushing this message, this just happens to be the season that they are in. And that's not it's not that they've cracked the code for life and that they're going to live this way like eternally. Like it just might be the season that they're in. They might find themselves with babies or in a relationship that supports this kind of lifestyle. And you just see a glimpse on social media. You don't know how it's going to work out for them, in 5 years from now or whatever. You're just witnessing the season that they are in, but then you take that little tiny snippet of a reel, right? Seeing the season of the life they're in, or I should say the season of life that they're projecting and putting outward, right? And then you look at the whole entirety of your life and you just can't really compare the two,
Yeah. And I think too that as someone who has been really disciplined most of my life and, kind of having people say, well, you're too disciplined, you're too this, you're too that, and feeling like I needed to tone it down for myself. I mean, I think I went through a lot of shame with it as well, where it was this whole like, okay, well, maybe I am doing too much. Maybe I want too much. And I think that for anyone listening to this, if you have really big dreams and really big goals for your life, and if you want to really challenge yourself to creating a really incredible life, leaning into the rigidity of some of these things is really important. And I'll even give you an example. I used to hate the gym. I was like, nope, everything I need to do needs to be feminine flow because I have too much discipline inside of me. It was almost just like, I wanted to not eradicate the discipline inside of me, but I wanted to have less of it somehow. Because I thought if I have less discipline, I'll open myself up to more creativity. That was what I thought. And that's because of what I was listening to online. And so I completely demonized the gym. I was just like, nope, it's too rigid. It's too structured. I need things to get me out of my structure. I need to get things out of my focus. And so I was like, nope, only going to do yoga and only going to ride my bike because those two things are free flowing. And once I started realizing, how far I could go with the mentality that I had, and once I started realizing how much that mentality was actually holding me back, and once I also started realizing the whole discipline is freedom, if you can just lean into consistency, if you can lean into a little bit of the rigidity, and then of course, balance it out with a lot of the other things that we're talking about, hey, you can actually go a lot further. And so now when I go to the gym, which I go almost every single morning, it's about treating myself well. And it's about understanding that I can be a really structured person. And especially for me to operate at the business level that I'm currently operating at, I need consistency and I need structure. And I just, you can't get to this level of human optimization, but then also just like, I think a certain aspect of like success, if you will. And I think that you could probably say the same thing, because I mean, you're also very successful in your field. You can't get there by just being like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to resist structure and order. And I only want to do it and I hear so many people say this where they like, I want to do it the feminine way. And it's just like, that doesn't really exist. The same way that you can't just do things completely off of discipline and focus.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of reminds me of something I posted on social media recently about entropy and the second law of thermodynamics. And that is, I know you and I talked about it a little bit, but that's that the universe is always moving towards disorder and chaos. And that's just the way it is. And unless you put energy into creating order and structure, the universe will always move to disorder. And that includes like your goals. I mean, goals are very high, like a high level of order to achieve your goals, right? And that takes very focused energy in order to create it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, because when I was listening to you talk, I was just thinking, yeah, I mean, if I didn't have, discipline and all of that, I would feel so much chaos. And personally, I would feel it just wouldn't be a good way to feel. You know what I mean? Because there's just a lot of stuff going on. I mean, how would I get anything accomplished in any area or focus? And I mean, in a healthy way, not in some sort of obsessive way, but in a healthy way. How would I be working towards the things that I want without that? I really have just beef with this whole divine feminine thing. I feel like now is kind of a good time to jump into it because we're talking about this, but I really can't get past this. Like it really feels like a male's fantasy that is what the divine feminine feels to me. It just doesn't feel like, who's to say, first of all, who's to say that that's what, females should be tapping into, for example, right? Who's to say that? And the traditional work that women have done, even just raising babies, is really, really, really hard, exhausting work. I'm not even talking about like having a business, but like in itself, like raising babies and then all the other things that we've had to do for thousands of years as women, it's hard work. I think now women are able to run around in a field more than they ever were. When you have to, you don't have the food that you need to like feed your babies, and you've got, 8 kids and Lord knows what you're dealing with. Like that's hard and exhausting work. So it feels kind of like it's painting women in a way, I think, that we are weak and not organized and lack logic, and that we need to rely on men to provide us with those sort of things. I really feel like that's what this message is about. And I'm not saying like we shouldn't have strong men. We absolutely need strong men. I'm a big supporter of men. I work with a lot of men, but this whole idea that that's being projected on social media just does not feel, I don't know where it's coming from, to be honest.
Right. And I also feel like different women have different levels of, this quote unquote feminine energy and this divine feminine. And some females can tend towards more like masculine traits. And I think that that's also totally normal. I think that trying to put women in a box like that also really bothers me, because I'm just like, well, no, like there's even sexuality on the, like we all exist on, it's not straight up you're straight or you're gay. It's just, there's so many different variations and there's so many different levels of even hormones, male hormones versus female hormones, and every single person and every single female is going to be different as well. And so your genetic makeup and even everything that you have inside of you is also going to dictate how you project yourself in the world. And so by saying, all women want to do is just prance around and step into their divine feminine is kind of like, well, but like, how can you generalize that way too? And I think that those generalizations are things that kind of also just make me roll my eyes, especially as a female who, has been, I think I can say, like I was a tomboy in growing up, and I didn't always want to do all of the female things that I was told that I should want to do.
Yeah. And then the more that you believe that these messages come out that you should be a certain way, the less in touch with who you really are you become.
Because then you start to question yourself, which is exactly what happened to me.
Right.
And especially with, like because we're talking about business as well. I love how you focused on, the universe is always working towards disorder. When you posted that, I was like, oh man, this is so true. And then I started looking at it in every single facet of my life and I think this is what is also so beautiful about rest and about just enjoying yourself and about taking a day off, let's say, is if you have too much structure, cool. It's so easy. It's so much easier for you to just take a day off or take an afternoon off and do something completely unproductive, because everything is going to go towards disorder anyways. Right. Everything in your life is constantly going to try to direct you towards disorder. And so if everything's trying to direct you towards disorder, wouldn't it be so much more beneficial for yourself and for humanity, really, for you to lean towards order? And then when you feel that shift inside of you, when you feel, okay, I feel like it's too orderly, or I feel like I need to take a break, all you need to do is just step out and take a pause where you're going to re-regulate.
Yeah. I mean, at a biological level, like rest is what allows us to have more energy. Like, we can't have just infinite. I don't care like how much caffeine you're taking back. Like some people claim they can run on 3 hours of sleep a night, which the more I've researched sleep, the more I've learned that they just don't know what it's like to actually be rested. But you have to rest. Like you can't just go. But that comes back into the whole thing about seasons and knowing when it's time to rest and knowing when it's time to work. And not making the seasons of work awful, and not listening to what these messages on social media are telling you that your life should look like, and really knowing, well, what do I want my life to look like? What is it that I actually want? Why am I here? What do I want to use my life to do? Not what is the trend on Instagram telling me that I should be doing because I'm a woman, and not feeling shamed by the choices I make as a woman, and really just doing what it is that you want and living how you want to live. It's kind of like you were saying, stop putting women in a box,
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I also love saying to my clients, so if anyone here, if you're working on a business and if you're feeling like sometimes you get really overwhelmed and you're like, well, what should I do? Here's what I tell every single one of my clients. And this is actually the people who only talk about divine feminine, all that kind of stuff, they're probably not going to like this. And sometimes I feel like I ruffle some feathers with my clients, but people just need to understand this. So everyone has, the way that I see this is everyone exists on a line between either I'm being too hard on myself or I'm not being hard enough. And when we talk about overwhelm, and when we talk about feeling like, oh my goodness, I feel like I could potentially overwork myself, and I'm so scared to overwork myself, I truly believe that this also comes into play with the divine feminine dynamics and the manifestation stuff and all that kind of stuff, because then people are like, okay, no, I don't need to work as hard to actually get the results that I want to get. I just need to stay in feelings. And I really do feel like the whole stay in feelings is not being hard enough on myself. And what I always say to my clients is, I would much rather you get to the edge of being too hard on yourself than not be hard enough. Because if you are trying to hit a goal, and if you are trying to grow a business, and especially people who are in my programs who want to hit six figures, who want to kind of have it all, you want to get used to being on that edge of being too hard on yourself, not to burn out. But if you're afraid of getting too much to that one level, you're never going to understand your full potential because you're so afraid of reaching it. You're so afraid of reaching that tipping point that you're shying away from it. So you don't even understand what is fear and what is actual truth.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear, a lot of avoidance when people start saying that they don't want to put that level of work in. A lot of times it's because they don't want to be seen, or they have perfectionistic sort of tendencies, or they are really afraid of what other people are going to think of them and, their work and so forth. So just not going there is almost like a defense mechanism.
Yeah. And it's what is overwhelm really, right? I think there's a very big difference between being overwhelmed, being stressed out, and having actual burnout or adrenal fatigue. Like those things are very rare. Sure, they happen. And I think that for some people, if you've had it before, it really sucks, right? You don't want to get to that level for yourself again. However, if you can really start to, which is where some of this feminine work comes in really in handy, if you can start to understand those cues inside of yourself of, okay, this is too hard, or I'm pushing it too hard, or I'm starting to feel these feelings. Your body doesn't just go from feeling overwhelmed to having complete burnout. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's a series of weeks, and it's a series of hours that you're committing to that, and you're committing to overworking yourself. And if you can start to notice those small cues on a daily basis, you can say, okay, I understand this is actually a body cue that's telling me that I am being overworked and I need to take a break, versus I'm so afraid of being overwhelmed that I'm not even going to do these activities in my business because I'm afraid that I might hit that tipping point. And I think that with a lot of the online jargon of, well, you just need to kind of feel good all the time, and you shouldn't overwork yourself, and that's not what females should do, quote unquote, should do, right? It gives people a cop-out. And I think it gives a lot of people a cop-out for being like, okay, well, this is overwhelm. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And it's almost this whole like, you can't touch overwhelm, because if you touch overwhelm, and if you as my business coach, or you as this person in online business, if you're telling me that overwhelm is okay, now you are too masculine, you're too disciplined, you're, you're a slave laborer, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of the podcast that we did last with talking about tolerating discomfort and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't listened to that one, I'd say to definitely go back and listen to it. And yeah, I mean, and just listening to what you're saying, like, I'm thinking about the mindset component of it because, that's what I do. But usually there's some mindset issues going on as well. And one of the big ones is wanting to control the outcome, the uncomfortableness of uncertainty, right? Not having a guarantee of results, being really attached to the outcome, those kinds of things. Like if you have a lot of those irrational, limited beliefs, whatever you want to label them, if you have a lot of those going on, you are going to be feeling a lot more stress, being overwhelmed, burnout than if you really get your mind in a healthy place. And I think a lot of women are not addressing those underlying irrational beliefs. And so they are like, I'm out. I want this divine feminine thing. I just want to manifest everything because, that's just too much, but it's really because they're not addressing those other mindset components.
Right. And we're also told to only listen to our emotions. A lot of this like Instagram pop culture is also saying, well, listen to how you feel all the time and only do things based off of how you feel. Or the one that I hate the most is your intuition is the best strategy.
Yeah.
You don't know if your intuition is actual intuition or if it's just fear.
No, it's, and I'm saying right now, like as a psychologist who's been in this field for, I'm in here 2 decades now. I don't know how that's even possible, but I am. That is really bad advice. Just listening to your emotions is really, really bad advice.
Yeah. And it's not going to get you anywhere, right? It's not going to give you, like we said, the riverbank that's going to allow all of your thoughts, all of your creativity to flow somewhere. It's just going to, and honestly, a lot of the times it's going to make you feel more unstable.
Right.
And yeah. And I mean, sure, sitting in your emotions, sitting in your feelings, allowing your feelings to flow. We both talk about that. It's not that we are completely anti divine feminine or we love that stuff too. We just feel like Instagram pop culture has really tried to promote a specific way of doing things. And it feels too imbalanced. Like you said, the complete other way, where it's actually trying to tell people that they shouldn't have any type of structure in their lives and they should only listen to their emotions and they should only just do all of these creative things. And it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous to a person's like personal progress.
Yeah, there's a lot of really bad and harmful advice that is being put out about these sort of things. And you have to be really careful about it. And yeah, emotions, we don't just have emotions like out of the blue for the most part. Emotions come about by how you think. And so if you're just sitting in emotions and you're not really accessing like how you think and working on how you think, and you're just being ruled by your emotions, then, I think it's really a formula to just feel really bad, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not like anti-emotions. It's just, let's not just sit in our emotions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you look at, I love the classic example of the stock market with emotions, because this is how you derail your progress, right? So stock market, you see the stocks go down. All of a sudden you have this huge panic. All you want to do is listen into all of those emotions and you want to take all of your money out of the stocks. But that's actually the worst time to take your money out of the stocks, right? In fact, that's the best time to buy new stocks because then the stocks become on sale. And so when you can start mastering your emotions through the ups and downs, and this happens in business too. This is something that I try to tell my clients over and over again, especially those who are just starting out, because a lot of the game to really be able to master your business is mastering your emotions when you see things happening in your business. So if you wake up one morning and you're just like, oh my God, I just feel like absolute crap and I don't want to do anything. And if you're just like, I just need to listen to my emotions, you're not going to do anything that day. And then the next day you're going to wake up and you're like, I still feel like crap. And I just need to honor myself and listen to my emotions. Guess what? Day 2, you're not going to do anything. And then day 3, now you feel really upset that you hadn't done anything 2 days prior, but you're still listening to your emotions. So now you're upset. Day 3, now you're not going to do anything either. And you're just creating this cycle for yourself where you're not doing anything because you're only focused on being, you're only focused on listening to your emotions. And then you might have one day that week where you feel really good. And so you go all in on your business and you feel really, really good about yourself. But now you just put in one day of work for your business and you're expecting 5 days of results.
Right. Right. And you need the consistency. So, I'm guessing people who are listening to your podcast, they're coaches, right? They're entrepreneurs, probably small business owners. And obviously they're putting the time to listen to this because they want a successful business. They want, the lifestyle that comes with all of this. And it's like putting the cart before the horse. Like if you want that kind of lifestyle, you have to be disciplined. You have to be consistent. You have to show up. You have to follow logic and your plan and not just give into emotions. And you have to do the work. It's just, there's like no way around it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love that almost as like a closing. And I also remember even just people who are traveling and like put their 9 to 5s and things like that. And that whole idea of, and I mean, we both put our 9 to 5s too, right? Yep. And I think that whole idea of when you just quit, you feel this amazing rush of just like, now I can just do whatever I want, whenever I want to, right? And there's this huge, like, I see people when they're traveling, for example, because I live in Nicaragua, it's very touristy here. And so I see people who are like backpacking. They're like, yeah, we quit our jobs, right? But they're quitting their jobs and they're doing this, just kind of doing nothing. It's a season. Eventually, the savings are going to run out, right? Mm-hmm. Eventually, and for most people, I think they understand that, right? When you're not listening to Instagram pop culture, you understand it. You understand that this is going to be a season of my life where I quit my job. I have enough savings. I'm going to backpack the world for, let's say, for example, 6 months. And then after those 6 months, I'm going to now figure something else out. But the only reason you were able to do that backpacking for the 6 months is because you spent 5 years working, right? And I think that we need to understand that balance, and we need to understand that whole, I can do this. I can frolic in the field and I can go out and play with my friends because I also created a structure in my life that allows me to do that.
Yes. Hard work is not a terrible thing. It's really a blessing to be able to do hard work. I really think that we're all here to do hard things and not just take the easy way out with things. And a lot of purpose and life satisfaction comes out of doing hard work. I mean, nothing that's really valuable just comes out of the blue to you easily. Like everything in life takes hard work to get. And there's just so, you feel so good when you put that hard work in. I think that you just can't replace that, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And whatever that is, whether it's hard work as a coach, whether it's hard work with being a mom, like whatever it is, like let's stop letting Instagram tell us that, hard work is a terrible thing and we shouldn't be, striving to do it and you're less of a woman and you need to work on your divine, spiritual component because you're lacking in some kind of capacity. Like,
right.
No. No. All
right. Discipline equals freedom, everyone. If you can just lean in a little bit more to the discipline and understand that the discipline does not make you less feminine. It's probably just going to make you more feminine because it's going to be allowing you to enjoy that with so much more confidence. I think that's one of the greatest takeaways. Is there anything else you want to say, Lindsay?
No, I mean, just along what you were just saying, I mean, in my opinion, nothing feels worse than financial stress and debt. And, like finding that freedom through discipline and, whatever it is for you and your family and what works for you, like, there's just so much there's just so much value in that, really.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for being on here. Lindsay and I are probably going to be on another podcast episode very soon. And we'll catch you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarajloureiro.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.